G'day. We're on Luke chapter 4. We're following the steps of Jesus through the eyes of Luke, the historian, my hero. We left off where Jesus was almost killed by his own home congregation, pushed off a cliff. So it's getting pretty radical. And he heads away down from the high country around Nazareth down towards the Sea of Galilee and to Capernaum, the little town there, the fishing town. And that's going to become his headquarters pretty much for the rest of his mission. He comes and goes from there. He sets the template for his mission moving around the country. He's going to be an itinerant preacher, not so much just sitting in one synagogue or another synagogue, but he's moving across the country and his feet are clearly planted in the scripture and he's targeting the synagogues, but he's moving from town to town and he's teaching in such a fresh way that he's electrifying his audiences. People are talking about, wow, this is amazing. We haven't heard teaching like this. And in a way, I think he's almost defibrillating Israel's heart. And in another way, he's like a skilled surgeon who's operating on an illness, a disease that got the very heart of Israel, and he's trying to heal it, bring goodness and light and healing to the whole country. But in the process, the light is coming and it's stirring the darkness everywhere because there's a challenge for him. The kingdom of darkness is present everywhere. And in this case, in the most unlikely place, you would think, it's in the synagogue. And I wonder how long this demoniac man, this demon-possessed man, had been sitting there in that synagogue. Maybe he was one of the pillars of the church. Maybe he was a sort of respected citizen, I don't know. But it seems to me he may well have been camouflaged there for a long time, where the law is being taught. People are very austere and religious. But right there in that very headquarters, if you like, of religion, here's this man who's caught up by a demon. And so the austerity of the service is shattered. This man screamed. The demon screams, "You're the Holy One of Israel." Now that was something that the congregation in Nazareth didn't see. But the demons saw it. From their side, they could see exactly who Jesus was. Well, he silences the demon. His purpose is to return dignity to that man. And that's always Jesus' way. He brings people from confused or abnormal behaviour to normal behaviour. And he wants to lift that man up to be all that he can be. The demon, in his one last sort of vicious, mean-spirited gesture, throws him on the ground and scuttles away. So Jesus places great value on the individual always, and Satan has complete contempt for God's creatures. So Jesus, like he was in Nazareth, he's the calm master and commander. He's in control, and he's not fazed by what the devil is trying to do to him personally. So the demons are silenced and cast out, and Jesus is in complete control. And you can imagine the news of these events is spreading like wildfire right through the Galilee region and even beyond, down south to Judea eventually, and into neighbouring countries like Lebanon and Syria. So Jesus moves out of that public arena in the synagogue into Simon's home, into Peter's home. And there's a beauty about the way Luke does this, so that Jesus can move effortlessly from public performance on a big scale or a public scale into a little private context. And there Peter's mother-in-law is lying sick. She's got a fever. And Luke, the doctor, he follows this very carefully, the way Jesus moves close to Simon's mother-in-law, and it's intimate. He cares for her, and he rebukes the illness, which is interesting, isn't it? It's almost like it's a person, and the same as he rebuked the storm, he spoke to it as if it had a personality. I don't know how that works, but what does show out is that in this contest, Jesus is the master. And I think that's the mark of his life, that every context he goes into, even his own trial and crucifixion, he's still the master. So Jesus is not just some faith healer going around the countryside drumming up trade, but he's a carer. He has a personal interest in the people he's dealing with. Now Luke's pretty impressed. He's a doctor who's watching this, and this becomes a mark of Luke's Gospels. He notices what Jesus does, particularly for women, and he brings them to the forefront in his Gospels. Well, you can imagine the guests at that table. They must have been absolutely buzzing by now. They've watched Jesus in this showdown at the synagogue. They've seen him lift up a woman from being prostrate on the bed, sick with an illness, and she's out in the kitchen working. And they've heard the demon actually declare he's the Holy One of God. What was going on at that meal table, I wonder? And here he is in this humble, ordinary dwelling, reclining at a meal, enjoying the company, moving from the spectacular, the sort of the larger picture into the smaller picture quite effortlessly, as if it's all of one piece. And it must have defied imagination, this seamless blending of the supernatural with the natural, the joy and the excitement of that healing, and here God and man at table are sat down together. Well, the day was far from over, and the reports of what's happening, you can imagine, are travelling very fast. It spread like wildfire, and it's not long before there's a steady stream of people carrying their loved ones, their friends, neighbours, down to be healed by Jesus. And they appear outside, and Jesus' highly individual approach is there again. He goes from one to the next. He doesn't just wave his hand over the crowd, but he deals with each one individually. And I think that's a picture of how Jesus is going to go about his ministry. He's not just interested in fixing somebody's leg or their eyes or their ears or whatever, but he's trying to restore the whole person. He wants to bring them back to full sonship, daughtership in the kingdom of God. He wants them to come to the Father and be healed from the inside out as well, from the psychological side, from the spiritual side, from the physical side. And so it's not just bodies that he's mending, and as he travels and heals people, he's mending broken relationships, wrong thinking, prayerlessness. He deals with fear, ostracism, forgiveness or unforgiveness, selfishness and pride. And on the other side, Satan's insidious invasion of the human race. He's defaced, and he brings people down, and he dehumanises them. So this demoniac in the synagogue wasn't the only one, and Jesus comes across more, and again they're announcing who he is, and he tells them to be silent. Jesus doesn't need their publicity. He doesn't need their agency to help him declare who he is. Now Peter's and the others have witnessed this, and they must have been absolutely stunned by the end of the day. And Galilee was never going to be the same. It had shattered the peace of this farming, fishing, quiet community up in beautiful Galilee region. But suddenly they were electrified by the arrival of this preacher who was going to do such amazing things. And it seems like Jesus too must have been exhilarated. I can picture him being just as exhilarated by seeing people set free, the joy of seeing the lame walk or a demoniac set free. And I think, it took a lot out of him. And so it's not surprising we find him, and he does this routinely, retreating and finding a quiet place where he can reflect. And like his ancestor David, looking for quiet waters, and still waters and green grass, and a refreshment of spirit from the Father. And I wonder if the Father was spreading a table before him there to refresh him in the presence of all that hostility. He goes away and he finds refreshment there so he can come back into the ministry that he's been given. Well, having launched this ministry, the demands escalate exponentially. a charismatic teacher and healer, brings hungry, needy people to him, and they want to cling to him. They want to possess him. It's normal, isn't it? People want to hang on to their hero and sort of build a wall around him and own him as theirs. He's a local boy, you know, he's our man. And but Jesus, I think, is pushing beyond that. He's not content to just stay in Capernaum. He knows that that will sort of shrink his ministry. He's got a wider picture. He's thinking of the whole of the country. And I think he had a very clear strategy in mind to go from all the towns and villages right through the whole of the country, including Jerusalem eventually, but steadily to cover the whole country. And he's going to prepare men, send them out ahead of him, and he's going to bring the whole of the country to attention, just as John the Baptist did from down in the bottom end of the country. He's going to sweep the whole country with his message. I think the mark of Jesus' greatness was that he had great compassion for the leaderless masses, for the people hungry for direction and hope. And he talks about the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And his passion was to go out and to serve them. And as he put it nicely, the good shepherd who'll go and look for one lost sheep and bring it safely home, one son, one prodigal daughter. He wants to bring them all home and bring them home to the Father. And he's willing to leave the bigger flock for searching for one lost lamb. And he was a man who knew what his mission was, and he never faltered from it. That's the great thing about Jesus. He was a man on a mission, very focused, very clear-minded, and very strategic. And his prayer carried him through it. I wonder if Satan made a mistake when he took Jesus up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world. I wonder if that, in a flash, Jesus saw, those kingdoms don't belong to Satan. He can't offer them to me. I'm going to take all those kingdoms back. And I wonder if I like to imagine that he saw Africa and Asia and North America and South America and the Pacific and maybe Australia. In that flash, he saw all the countries and the kingdoms of the world, and he said, they're mine. I'm going to take them back. I'm going to send my apostles to the whole world to preach the gospel, and then the end will come. So I like to think that Satan maybe overstepped his mark there, and he made a mistake letting Jesus see that big picture, because it just set him on fire to carry the gospel everywhere. That's just my take on it.